Ruth Greenspan Bell is a public policy fellow with the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program. She joins us today to talk about urgency or lack thereof around the issue of climate change. And not sure how to frame this, Ruth, and we've been having these discussions off the air, and now we'll try to have some that we share with the public. Let me start with some orientation. Where are we in terms of the science and what's happening currently?
Well, I think the science is telling us we need to act. I mean, there's almost no debate, despite the fact that some people think there's a debate going on. I think the debate is only in the area of details, but the trend line is pretty clear where we're going.
It's a political debate, not a scientific debate.
Yes.
So there's no doubt in your mind about the science that we're looking at and where we're headed. So what about in terms of the response? If the science is pretty certain about a warming planet and a human role in that warming, and the beginnings of some very serious implications of that process, where are we in terms of a response to the problem?
I think we made a lot of progress this week. I mean, the president's announcement, yes, on the carbon regulation, I thought was a huge leap forward. In some interesting ways, it's both a major step forward, but also kind of a consolidation and codification of what's already going on, because there's a tremendous amount of work going on at the state level, at the local level, at the corporate level. And I think he gives heart to that, and he consolidates it and gives it a pathway to move forward. And so I think we really, I think it could be a big turning point for this issue.
And are these moves significant beyond the symbolic?
Oh, definitely. He has a target there. We're going to reduce carbon pollution from coal-fired power plants. This is real.
How immune are these moves to political upheaval? If a Republican becomes the next president, does he overturn the rules put in place by the Democrat Barack Obama?
Well, first of all, it's hard to overturn a rule. It's easier to overturn an executive order, and much, not all of what the president has done has been executive order. But now he, through the CAFE regulations, you know, the fleet standards for cars, and through this one, these are regs. Now they'll need to be defended in court, and of course a subsequent administration could choose not to implement or enforce them vigorously. But, you know, I think the American public has been looking for this. If you read the president's statement, it was such an artfully presented explanation of both the urgency of this issue and also the ability to do something about it. And I think that's what the American public has been looking for. I think this is the first time I've seen a president explain what we can do. And that's all to the good.
Is it possible, you know, and we've talked about this, I don't want to be coy about it, but is it possible that there's a sort of a tipping point reached in terms of public opinion and the beginnings of significant action, not just from the United States, but other countries? China's been involved, others. Is it possible that we're already at some point where the action is going to accelerate and the response is going to accelerate, and we're just not fully aware of that yet?
Well, you never know, but I think the fact that the United States, which is, you know, the biggest, most wasteful economy, is acting seriously and has done this. You know, a lot of the world was looking for the U.S. to pass legislation. That didn't happen. They have to understand that there may never be comprehensive legislation, but that steps like this take us in the right direction, and we can assume a leadership role. Now, what's happening in Paris is that countries are making commitments, and this is a pretty big commitment for us, so this should inspire other countries to take that next step.
The sense of urgency around the Iran negotiations, you saw the nations of the world mobilize with this existential threat, at least regional, if not beyond. And you'd like to see that happen in the arena of climate change. Could you discuss maybe some of the compare and contrast type reasons that we're not seeing that same sort of focus?
Well, let me take the positive part of that. You know, this is an existential threat. Iran is clearly an existential issue, but for a region and for a certain set of countries, this is an existential threat.
This is the mother of all existential threats.
For humanity. So, yes, I think there's real room there to, why aren't we treating it the same way? Why aren't we devoting the kinds of, you know, the president committed a negotiating team. He did this in 4 years. He didn't solve all of our issues related to Iran. But he did take this big issue, and he has managed to take it off the table. I think there's an analog in the climate world. The current United Nations climate UNFCCC process involves a huge basket of issues. One way to approach that would be to take the biggest issues out of there, namely greenhouse gas emissions, get that resolved, and see whether resolving that helps create a better atmosphere for resolving some of the other issues. But continuing to insist on resolving all issues in one basket, I think, is actually not helpful. I actually also think that the UN process, which is kind of a little bit of a lumbering process, could be sped up. You know, countries show urgency in various ways. It's very interesting to read that when the president decided that we needed to make some changes in our relationship to Cuba, he had a special team go do that. And he kind of circumvented some of the normal...
So you think it's time for an enhanced climate change team?
It's time for an enhanced climate change team.
Is there a final thought on this, what rallies public opinion is? You know, when we talk about the nuclear threat, there's the iconic imagery of the mushroom cloud, and there's that type of imagery that really resonates with people. You don't really need to say a lot about what the threat is. We haven't seen that in the realm of climate change. You've seen artists' conceptions of underwater cities or semi-submerged cities. You've seen polar bears on ice floes, but there's nothing that brings it all together.
You know, as we know, sadly, climate change is a sliding disaster. There can be a terrible superstorm in one part of the world and another part of the world is not affected, and then they're hit. And it's random. People are by nature very optimistic, so when these things happen, you know, basically you eventually spring back, you get your life back together, and you start working, and you try to treat life as normal. I don't think that what's going to get us going on climate change is some big, huge thing like this or some big symbol. But I do think that the kind of leadership that's being offered now, showing that there are things that we can do and we can do them now and they can make a difference, will help rally people and make them feel, you know, much more hopeful about their ability to address this issue. And over time, I think will make a difference. I'm very optimistic about what happened.
Well, I'm going to take that optimism and end on that note, because we could go in another direction if we continue to speak. And there's no neat, tidy package here. This is an ongoing story, so we'll stay tuned and we'll revisit it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ruth, for joining us.